Spain, in a lot of ways, is quietly becoming one of the epicenters for fitness and longevity.
I think the time has come where we have to decide, do we want to make fit people fitter? Or do we want to make people who've got illnesses, chronic illnesses, or people who are struggling, are we going to make those people fitter? It's cardiovascular fitness, it's strength, and it's emotional well-being. What do you want to do in that last decade? Do you want to be playing with your grandkids? Or do you want to be sitting on the sidelines, in a chair, watching your grandkids kick a ball?
Welcome to this week's, we've got a special episode of L.I.F.T.S. Mo, my co-host, how are you doing today in what is it, Texas you're in?
I'm in Texas. It's hot. It's humid. I'm in Houston visiting my parents for a week, and I've got the 3 kids with no nanny and no wife. So I don't know what's tougher, if it's doing what I'm doing now or preparing for a board meeting, which I have on Friday. It's difficult, but I'm having a good time. It's always good to be, with the family. The pool always feels good in the afternoon once I'm done working and I get hop in. But I've been trying to get out in the mornings. It's actually not that far off from DC, and I love to run. So they live about a mile and a half from the gym. So I typically jog to the gym, do some recovery. We'll get into some longevity stuff here, maybe some strength. And then if I want to do a run after, I'll finish it up with a run. So I'm here for the week. Always good to see the family. And Matthew, I recognize where you're at. I know you're in Hana House in Newport Beach. And I remember that booth that you're in might have been where we did our first podcast. So you sent me this picture of us having dinner in Newport Beach, and I met your wonderful family and your kids and your wife then too. But I remember, did we record our first podcast in a similar booth in Hana House?
We did. That's good memory, and this is the first time I've been here probably since you and I did that interview. So yeah, we're here in Hana House, and it's become a place I've turned up quite regularly. And interestingly enough, it's a nice segue into the we've got Rod on, and I wanted to talk about something that was a little bit more leaning into the field that we're going to talk about today. But I was here on Friday with Deborah, who was on podcast a few weeks ago, and she was talking about this product called Beamer, and she was raving about it. She, in fact, we've got a meeting tomorrow with a lady that's kind of very high up in this type of longevity space. She's got a studio in Newport Beach we're going to go and check out, and she was telling me about this product called Beamer, and suddenly the name clicked, and it was like, actually, that was the product I went on at FIBO, and so when I went out to FIBO this year, I had a long sort of travel period, probably ran a little bit too far whilst I was dehydrated, and I had this I obviously did some damage to my calf Achilles area, so I couldn't even walk on it. And I saw this booth at the trade show called Beamer, which was it was spelled BEMER. And I said to the lady, look, I've got a bit of a problem. Does this, is this worth me trying? So she sat me down, strapped this just a piece of almost like material around my calf, and I sat there for 20 minutes just doing my emails, and got up, and my pain had gone from like a 10 to about a 4. And so one, I was quite impressed because it allowed me to walk around the trade show for the whole day. And then she said, look, come back at the end, do another session, which I did. Again, it sort of took the pain down, again, a few notches. Went out in the evening, came back the next morning, did another session, because I thought maybe this is just psychological, that I was feeling this and it wasn't really happening. And then I did one again on the second evening, and then I went out for a run, which I hadn't been able to do for a few weeks. So I've no idea what this does. Apparently it's some sort of like electromagnetic energy regulation, which is what it's called. But I was, you sit there and you don't feel as though it's doing absolutely anything. So I could imagine if someone was trying to sell you one of these, it's one of those treatments where you don't feel as though it's doing anything, so you don't really know if it's worth paying for. And I think these systems are about $3 or $4 grand, so they're not cheap. But when I actually had a problem, I went to her with it, and it was just remarkable with what it had done. And there's some really good research on it. I think it's an interesting concept to have a look at, and I'm going to sort of learn more over the next few weeks. But yeah, that's kind of my little health hack, and I think Deborah's going to convince me to buy one. So
okay.
So,
Well, yeah, so much, and we'll get into it here. That's good. That I mean, so much of I think longevity and health, it's about getting your blood to flow freely, effectively, all over your body, delivering nutrients and oxygen when you need it, right? Especially at times of need. And I think when you start cutting out circulation, and sometimes when you have an injury, your body wants to focus on the particular part. So all the nutrients rushes towards them, and you might be ignoring some other parts. So it sounds like, and I don't know anything about this machine, but it sounds like it somehow promotes blood flow to the areas that need the help. And through that, if everything else is in point, it's driving nutrition, hydration, all the cells that you need to repair that piece. So that's exciting, Matthew. You did not mention that to me. Now I know why you didn't go running with me. Yeah, we still haven't gone for a run yet, so I feel like we need to get that done. But as you mentioned, we're excited to have a special guest on today, someone who I've not spoken to before, but I've heard of. Today's guest is a serial disruptor who spent the last 3 decades scaling some of the most influential brands in fitness, from Fitness First to Viva Gym's launch in Spain, and now a really new bold play, which is related to what we were just talking about, that could help reshape how we think about aging. Rod Hill has seen the entire fitness cycle from HIT to habit stacks to big box to boutique. He's helped fitness first scale. He later helped plant the flags for Anytime Fitness and also Tribe in Spain. But today he's building a gym not just for young teenagers or Gen Xers, but really for the 40-year-olds who want to live to be 100. I would even argue 120. And I'll get into that here in a minute. His latest venture, Zenergie, at least from what I've been able to see, Rod, happy to unpack this, is part spa, part gym, part tech lab, but it really is all about longevity as a central theme. So if you think about smart strength circuits, Zen studios, infrared saunas with this Mediterranean Spanish mindset, that's really what he's brought together. He's combined biomarkers and mindfulness, and to me, finally built this fitness model that really respects the back half of your life, which I'm getting close to, and I would think is really, potentially the best part of your life. So you're not
Yeah.
just selling hype, Rob. I'm really excited to be speaking with you. I think you're creating what is the next boom in fitness, and which really is not about reps or having a six pack, but it's really about living longer and living better. So, Rod Hill, welcome to Lifts.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks very much. Thanks, Matthew, for inviting me on. No, it's very exciting, for us to be here talking about Zenergy. I think, just going back to the beginning of my career, and I've kind of gone a little bit full circle because I started in Fitness First as a fitness manager in the first club in 1992 in Bournemouth in the UK. And the vision there was from the founder, Mike Balfour, who was responsible for the whole vision of this affordable fitness chain, was really 6 clubs. So I was the fitness director. I've been playing rugby. I was dabbling in a little bit of bodybuilding, playing rugby, and I got involved in the first club. That's where I met Matthew when we were buying your dumbbells, Matt, in the back in the day. And it's really interesting because we were kind of indoctrinated in a way about looking out after the underdog. So I think the basis of everything that we're talking about today, and I'm becoming an older guy in the industry. I've stayed in the industry for some years, and I've had the luck to be involved in some interesting projects. And I think this has been shaping my thoughts on how we're going to develop Zenergy based on the industry, where we very much feel that the industry has been very good at looking after people who like to work out, right? I mean, so we feel that, and we were a little bit indoctrinated. And I remember going to the early 90s in Ursa and some of the big events, and we were always talking about, the 20 percenters, the 20 percenters, and trying to reach out to people who weren't in the category of the 20 percenters. And so when we were developing Zenergy, we took it, we have a kind of a little bit of a simplistic way of looking at this industry. And the industry we've broken down into 20-20-60. And we've always been talking about 20-20-60. And what I mean by that is that we have 20% of the population that generally like to work out. The fitness industry was built by people like ourselves, people that like to work out. find it quite easy, come from a sports background. And then you have maybe 20% of the population that don't really want to listen to messages of health. And it's pretty hard to reach those people. But in the center, we have this huge concentration of people who try to connect with our product, with the mainstream product, with the gym product. Maybe they're coming in, they're coming out, and a lot of those people, have other goals rather than, as you say, a six pack and bigger biceps. They're looking for health outcomes. They're looking for someone to show them how to work out, and typically they're over 35, because let's not forget our industry is predominantly in Europe anyway, 18 to 35 dominated. If you look at the amount of members in the clubs, I think we're around 80% or slightly more than 80% of members who are 18 to 35. I'm 61 and I make up 1% of the membership base in Europe. And 50 plus is only 2% or 3%, although it's going a little bit higher, but it's still not there. So I think for me, when myself and my partner, George Haltenboss, decided that we were going to launch this brand, we did it because we could see that we just aren't very good in the fitness industry, I think, through my career, at engaging with people that don't like to work out. And I'm not being, opportunistic. I was part of that problem, and I see that. When I was a younger trainer, I didn't have the empathy maybe with somebody who was struggling with illness. But I actually have autoimmune disease as well, which is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So my family has a history of thyroid problems. So I got this in my 20s, and I've had to manage this illness through my life through exercise. So giving you this kind of background just to kind of give you an idea that I haven't kind of become an evangelist trainer later in life. It's always been part of my my interest in the industry. I did a sports science degree back in the 90s. Actually, Fitness First paid me to do an ACSM. We were studying with the American College of Sports Medicine. It was a requirement in the 90s, to do onboarding, very specific, very detailed onboarding. And we were all about bringing people into the gym that didn't like to work out. And when Fitness First became the first affordable fitness quality gym, we were attracting a lot of people who normally didn't work out in the past. And I think, Matthew, you remember that the biggest dumbbells we had in Fitness First in the beginning were 20 kilos. I was actually going to another gym sometimes to work out because the dumbbells weren't quite big enough for what I needed at the time. But it was what we were doing. It was all about looking after the person that found exercise difficult. Now, we succeeded in some ways, we failed in others, but the whole ideas behind Zenergie are based on absolutely there's a market, there's a big gap in the market, for a plus 35 gym concept. Talking about longevity is absolutely exciting for my age group, for sure. People 50 plus want to live till 100. So it's kind of like good timing and a good moment, I think, in the industry to take this. But I think there's some, there's a big commercial opportunity in this space, and we feel that we've created something, to really look at that space and start the conversations about how to capture this 35 plus market.
Well, Rod, I believe you are calling us in from Spain. You've decided to launch Zenergie in Barcelona, and just in preparation for this episode, I did a bit of research into why Spain. So I just want to take a step back and just for the audience, talk through what's happening in Spain right now and why it's more than just one brand. Spain, in a lot of ways, is quietly becoming one of the epicenters for fitness and longevity. Even big brands like Planet Fitness have
Yeah,
recently opened clubs in Spain as well.
yeah. Well, my relationship with Spain started a long time ago because I actually came to Spain with Fitness First back in 1998. So we started opening clubs in Spain in the late 90s, and I actually bought a house in Barcelona in 2002, and then I came back here in 2007 to live. So I've been living in Spain, for many years, for many different reasons. I mean, Spain's a great country, climate-wise, food-wise, quality of life. It's a great place to be, and there's certainly a booming economy going on right now. I mean, if you look at the well, there was a report last year from The Economist that names Spain the world's number one economy based on growth, based on future potential. And so, Spain's undergoing an incredible transformation in the last 20 years. real estate is very, very hot. Um, that could be storing up some problems in the future because, again, you've probably seen some protests against tourism in Spain just recently in Barcelona and
Yes,
other
I've heard
cities.
about that. Well,
Um,
something too, Rod, that people I think don't really know is Spain has one of, because this is not talked about, but Spain
yeah,
has one of the highest life expectancies in the world, which is over
yeah,
83 years, which is phenomenal. By
okay,
2050, 1 in 3 Spaniards will be over 65, which is why I think what you're building right now is so
yeah,
relevant.
yeah, yeah,
And population, though, even though you're getting older, what I've
yeah,
at least learned and read about, it's not aging in a decline. In fact, they're aging more to strength and vitality. So the
yeah,
culture, what you also have in Spain, which we don't have in the US, and it's a little bit different than the UK, it's you've got the Mediterranean lifestyle. In fact, people from the
yeah,
US and UK go to Spain to get recharged. You've got
yeah,
movement, you've got access to clean food, you've got it's a deeply kind of socially connected
yeah,
culture. And in a lot of ways, that Mediterranean diet and the Spanish lifestyle is the original longevity hack. When you think about even the benefits, for example, of taking a siesta and
yeah,
having a nap, we now know the benefits of having a little nap in the afternoon
yeah,
increases longevity. So you add in affordable healthcare, like you mentioned, year-round sunshine, a more relaxed pace of life, and you've got a foundation that is really built for what you're trying to do. Today, again, from prepping for this episode, what I've really found is that there's really an emerging ecosystem that is around proactive healthcare,
mm,
recovery studios, AI-powered diagnostics, and certainly what you're doing with
mm,
Zenergie,
mm,
to your
mm,
point, that is specifically designed for the 35, I'm gonna say 35 plus, but you're probably going even higher than that,
yeah,
population. It's really not about fitness anymore, but I think you're really focused on preventative care with measurable outcomes and so on. Um, so
yeah.
I think it's just such a tremendous market that isn't
Yeah.
represented well enough, which is why we're excited to speak with you.
Yeah, yeah. Look, Spain has done very, very well in the last few years. I mean, the lifestyle here is very flexible. The day's quite long in Spain. There's the siesta. People don't nap potentially, in the big cities, but the day, most people are actually now working out, during the day. But what's great about Spain is the day's very long. It's very flexible, and the shops are open till 9, 10 o'clock at night. Everything's easy, and Spain's done very, very well also from South American immigration in the last years. And maybe a lot of South Americans now coming to Madrid, maybe where they went to Miami before. A lot of the time, there are a lot of South American immigrants coming into Spain. Um, Everybody speaks Spanish, obviously, from South America, apart from Brazil, but a lot of Brazilians also coming to Spain. So they've really added to the country's productivity, to the workforce in a generally very positive way. And also, culturally, they're not so far away. So it's a very seamless integration. And so Madrid is really driving, Spain, Barcelona. Madrid typically has a kind of bridge to South America, Barcelona facing Europe. You've got cities like Valencia growing, you've got Alicante growing, you've got Zaragoza, Bilbao. So Spain's a very diverse and very, regional country with a lot of different cultures and a lot of different climates, and the powerhouses. And if you look at the big groups here, fashion industry, Spain's leading the world. I mean, the Inditex group, the owners of Zara, they're still by far the largest fashion group in the world, going from strength to strength. I think they've had a little bit of a dip, but they've created multi brands, Zara, Oysho now, their sportswear. In fact, we've signed a deal with this group for a clothing range for Zenergie, based on because we're going to be delivering yoga and strength training, and we see that the mix between longevity and retail is also another space which is very interesting, and we're keen to investigate, because if we're dealing with people that are a lot of people who aren't typical gym goers, I think it's great to be able to give them an onboarding where you can really get involved in retail, clothing, what to wear, different things like that. So we're really pushing that as well as part of the future of what we're doing. And we also think in here there's a lot of retailers who are creating wellness spaces in their department stores who need to become more relevant. And so wellness, longevity, integration is something that we're looking to do with the with the retailers. And then just finally, yeah, blue zones, Mediterranean diet, Mediterranean lifestyle. I mean, I can explain you a little bit about our structure here. We have a company called Fit Brands International. So myself and my partner George Houtenbos, who's Dutch, my partner's Dutch. He's been also living and working in Spain for about as long as I have been. So we got together in the pandemic to do a project together, and we actually brought Energy Fitness to Spain online. We didn't go to the UK. We bought the master franchise for Energy Fitness, and then our goal was to develop multi franchises under this umbrella of Fit Brand. So Zenergie is kind of our own. So we own the master for Energy Fitness Spain, where we created a box in a box model, a little bit of an upgrade, if you like, on the Energy UK product. And now we actually own the global trademark for Zenergie Body and Soul, and we're going to be looking to develop that from Barcelona to the world. So made in Barcelona, and looking to deliver that Mediterranean lifestyle message, longevity. And you're very right, Mo. I mean, I think I read somewhere that Spain would surpass Japan in the next 20 years as the longest living country in the world. And you've got Andorra up there, that little principality up in the Pyrenees, where people live a hell of a long time. So I think it's something to do with the altitude up there as well, and walking up mountains quite a lot. So.
Rod, I'd like to go back to the demographic. It's something that you and I have spoken about or philosophized for quite some time, maybe because that we're moving into that age group and recognizing that we don't fit into the traditional gym.
To do this, Matt, because no one else, everyone was saying, you've been doing this for too long. Can you do something where you're dealing with old guys? But I have to be clear, it's not a silver concept per se, because I just don't think silver gyms work. And for a guy who's obviously quite silver these days, I still don't associate myself with silver. I don't know if that was something to do with.
Well, yeah, I think if looking at your history, you've looked at a number of different models serving a very similar channel. So Fitness First days, you then were very successful. You opened and operated Anytime Fitness and was responsible for their international development, which I believe was very successful. You then were involved in the boutique sector, Tribe, which although they had challenges with their model in other countries, from what I understand, Spain continues to be a big success in Spain for certain reasons, and now I guess going into what most of the fitness industry would seem as a market that isn't quite as appealing, and so I clearly you've put a lot of time into what would seem like an obvious shift in a model that caters for a slightly different demographic. Explain your thought process from seeing what's going on in the market, looking at what you've done historically, and then taking what could be seen as a little bit of a gamble for going outside of the 20%, or even in Spain's case, 16% of the people that traditionally go to gyms, and putting your money where your mouth is to attract somebody that's a little bit older.
Well, I think part of it is getting older, Matt. I think that's obvious, because you start to feel differently. You start talking to people and having different conversations, and you start to realize that there's a lot of people out there looking for different solutions. And I think, just going back to the Fitness First days, we were on the stock market, okay? And when we were on the stock market, we had to justify our results. And a lot of the time, the analysts back in the 90s were all saying, go international, expand internationally, and they thought fitness was a fad. They thought fitness was a fad back in the 90s. And so when for those people who don't know the story, Fitness First was doing very, very well. And what really hurt us was the .com crash back in the early 2000s. And so Fitness First share price was so high that it got caught in the coattails, let's say, of the .com crash, and our share price collapsed. But we never really ever convinced the analysts, the investment community, or the general investment community, that fitness was a health product. And part of my journey, I think, has been really that I see the opportunity to create a valuation for our industry. I think the time has come where we have to decide, do we want to make fit people fitter? Or do we want to make people who've got illnesses, chronic illnesses, or people who are struggling, are we going to make those people fitter? And is it a little bit harder? It is a little bit harder, but I think that one of the big changes for me was our relationship with with eGym. We've signed a deal with eGym to be a global deal, and from a scaling point of view, that changes the game a little bit, because we don't need to have so many sports scientists in our clubs, which is also obviously a challenge to find sports scientists or type trainers who can do the programming for people with chronic illnesses and things like that. They're taking that away. We need great people, there's no doubt about it, and we're committed. But I've come to a stage in my career where there's not. So here's the thing: we've got a pharmaceutical industry looking at multiples of valuations. Like no, let's talk about Ozempic and some of the other things that are coming out in the weight loss market. And I was astounded. I've been digging into this a little bit, and I was astounded to know that the value of Novodansk, the makers of Ozempic, their business is worth more than the GDP of Denmark. Okay, it's the most valuable company in Europe right now, and it's come from nowhere to be valued at this kind of level. And I sometimes speak to people in our industry who still say, there's a lot of information out there, from influencers, whatever, saying that, exercise doesn't help you lose weight. I just don't agree with that, and I have because obviously I always thought that we're the energy expenditure side of the business, and we've got a message that maybe we should try to recover. Now, it's not everything, but it's something important, that our industry could play a role. But I think we've missed that opportunity a little bit, because we've let the pharmaceutical company come in with a solution. And the other argument, should we be teaming up with these businesses and helping people to get started? Well, maybe, maybe. I don't know the answer, but definitely our industry, I think, is missing the opportunity to position itself as the preventative option. And obviously managing illnesses, and myself with Hashimoto's, I've had this feeling inside for many, many years that, conventional medicine is fantastic when you're critically ill in most countries. And that's the feedback I get from many people who've had critical illness. And I'm not saying that, medicine doesn't have its place, but for chronic illness, for metabolic illness, for man-made, lifestyle diseases, our industry, I think, we're now seeing that we're far and by far the best option for many, many people managing chronic illnesses and managing chronic diseases without any of the nasty side effects that tend to come with taking medication. So talking about diabetes, we're talking about high blood pressure, cholesterol, managing muscle mass, and all the great things that strength training can do with managing blood sugar and all the rest of it. So for me, from my background in sports science, this for me is a very exciting opportunity. And I see when the pharmaceutical industry are able to get huge valuations based on drugs that do work but create secondary problems, which we're starting to find out about, certainly in the UK, it always hits me to say, why, as an industry, are we not talking more about the power of medicine as exercise, as medicine? You can look at some of the work that someone like Peter Attia is doing, and it's astounding, because we've always had the solutions to longevity in our hands in the fitness industry. Because when you talk about all the biohacking, all the different things that are going on, and I talk to people on a regular basis, and they say, "Hey, Rod, I'm taking, I've upped my magnesium and I feel great. I'm doing this, I'm doing the infrared, I'm doing the plunge pool, I'm doing everything else." And I said, "Okay, so what about your cardio training?" "Oh, no, I haven't started working out yet." Okay, so this is the thing again, that with us, with Zenergie, we want to democratize longevity to some degree and really bring it down to the market that aren't exercising, and trying to demystify a little bit, which is not going to be easy, but we're on a mission, to demystify and to really give people control over their bodies a little bit. So what I'm saying is that, by far and away, the number one indicator for longevity is cardiovascular fitness, or VO2 max, right? I mean, it's by far the biggest indicator. If you're in the top 20% of the population of the world with VO2 max, you're pretty much going to get over 80, I would imagine. If you're in the bottom 20%, you're probably not going to do so well. Secondly, strength, muscular strength, endurance, strong bones, joints. And number three, emotional well-being. So those are our three major, and you could, nutrition is going to be our fourth pillar, but at the moment we're saying let's not put too much pressure on people. It's cardiovascular fitness, it's strength, and it's emotional well-being. Which is more important is debatable. I think the science that some of the longevity scientists like Peter Attia are finding out is that VO2 max shows that it's very good, but you could be very good on VO2 and under muscled and overnourished. So there's a balance between all this stuff. So it's not quite so black and white, but definitely those three things. If you're not doing any of those three things, magnesium and creatine and extra protein is not going to give you too much extra help if you're not focusing on those three main pillars of longevity. So we believe with Zenergie Body and Soul that we're delivering the basics in longevity, because we've always had the solutions. We've just not been maybe communicating it in the right way. So we're seeing, sharing information, education, and it's not we don't want to patronize our members, but we really see that people need to have some control. Obesity crisis is out of control. In Spain, it's not maybe as bad as in the UK, but it's getting there. It's getting worse in lower populations. We're a little bit at the mercy of the food industry and the drug industry. It's not all negative, but there's some negativity, I think, coming in when you're looking at weight loss and you're looking at some of the food that we're putting on our tables and giving to our families. So that's a little bit our soapbox, my soapbox moment. But that's really where we sort of want to demystify a little bit of longevity. Now, I understand there's other operators going for the more high-end longevity. They're looking at scanners, they're looking at all these kind of things. But we really want to bring Zenergie to the democratize movement and exercise as a longevity medicine. And I think if you look at all the stats, if you look at all the science behind strength training, it's a miracle thing, for people to prevent diabetes, to prevent osteoporosis, to prevent, back in the 90s, Matt, we were talking about studio strength. We were talking about some of this stuff in the 90s. We were talking about behavioral change when we onboard people into our gyms. And that's all kind of gone away. Maybe because the prominence in Europe of low cost, so the staffing element was kind of taken out a little bit. So we're kind of going back full circle. And I think maybe it's because of the age, maybe it's because we're a little bit idealistic, but we really think that it's much, much better to deal with people over 35 because, well, they have more money, they have more need. And if we can engage them in the right way, they'll be more loyal. And the people I know around the world who kind of run one of these gyms tell me, Rod, I can't get rid of members that I'd like to leave because they depend on, their life quality depends on the gym. It depends on the work, and they've learned and educated, people about exercise. I mean, you've been in, you've been in the States a long time, but how many Brits understood what an espresso macchiato was 20 years ago before Starbucks came to the UK? And everybody now is talking about espresso macchiato, cortado, all the different kinds of coffee and everything else. We as an industry have to start educating our members, because I think if we don't do that, then the pharmaceutical industry will come up with something, and then we're just going to be fighting for the same 20%. And everybody in Europe is going for that first 20% who find exercise easy, So we're just not. We're just going to create a concept here with Zenergie Body and Soul where we're looking for people to come in who need something different. They need solutions to their health issues. They might just want to come into a gym which has lower intimidation, because with the e-gym, there's no plates, there's no weight stacks, nobody knows how much you're lifting. And it's a big factor. Intimidation in our industry is a big factor. And I think as you get older, you start to kind of see that. So anyway.
Well, I definitely want to jump into the secret sauce, but you said so much in your soapbox there, which has been great. But ultimately, it comes down to awareness. When you think about the big pharmaceutical companies, and you talked about Novo Nordisk, you're right. They're now the most valued company in Europe, with about 34% net margins, 50% operating margins. I mean, they're just printing cash. And what the pharmaceutical industry has done really, really well is learn to market the solution to the everyday consumer. As a fitness industry, I think in a lot of ways we haven't done that. We've been a little bit more exclusive. We're saying you've got to do meal prep, like to your point, Rod, like you have to do meal prep and take the supplements and show up for 2 hours, 6 days a week, and kind of we've made it so difficult that we've got it. But to your point, longevity is really simplifying it. You also brought up another good point about the rise of HVLP and these budget gyms, not just in Europe and Spain, but also in the US. And when you compare those gyms to like what you did early days to Fitness First, even Fitness First today, where it's a lot more
Yeah,
consultative, solution oriented, understanding what your goals are. We're going to be a partner with you, helping you get there. A lot of budget gyms today, they're providing a commodity. They're providing, clean, safe equipment variation, all the things, but they're not looking at their staffing, right? They're not going to have the experienced, the tenured staff. Now, they might lean on technology to help provide some of this information to the members, but in a lot of cases, the members coming to the gym have
mm,
already been informed. They already know. So it's that same 20% that we're just recirculating over and over again. Maybe they're leaving Fitness First and they're going to a pure gym and they
yeah,
already know what they want to do.
yeah,
I'd love to understand from your perspective, right? You've taken this unique approach to Zenergie. So I think about wellness clinics that we have in the US, like Remedy Place or Lifetime has one called Miora, where they're offering IV drips
mm,
and NAD drips and cryo and
mm,
like really this experiential but premium,
yeah,
non-accessible solutions. You've said, well, okay, that's great that that's happening over there on the premium sector. I'm going to democratize it. I'm going to focus on fundamentals. So you've built this product and body and so which I'd love to understand from your offerings.
yeah,
Number one, why did you choose to do it this way? Because in the US and the UK, the gyms said, we do what we do. The wellness clinics have said, we're going to offer these IV therapies and these other services that the big box gyms don't do, even though you've seen
yeah,
some of them go into big box gyms.
yeah.
You've taken a hybrid approach.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to wanting to going back to the educational message to members. I still think there's a lot of people out there globally who don't really understand the huge benefits of doing the basic exercises, and just working out and doing physical activity. And I think we've got to get that message over more clearly to general populations. And I think the big changing point for us is also the AI part of eGym, being able to prescribe programs, personalized programs. We're going to be working with programs where what's coming thick and fast are many chronic illness programs. There's algorithms coming out that are going to be able to address many different types of chronic illness, where the machine can program the load, people with MS, people with thyroid problems, people in cancer recovery programs. There's a lot of people out there. I worked out that there was even with my autoimmune, there's about 4 or 5 million people in Spain with thyroid illness. And the majority of those people find it difficult to exercise. And the doctors are telling them, no, don't work out too hard. You've got to be careful because there's inflammation and you need to rest. And the opposite is true, is the truth. People need to maintain their muscle mass. People should be taking some creatine. People should be doing cardio. You've got to kind of keep that metabolism going all the time, even if you're taking synthetic, thyroxine, because that's your thyroid gland is the driver of the whole body and the whole metabolism. And so there's so many people in society who just need to do the basic exercise part. And I think looking at some of the longevity specialists who are focusing on exercise science, such as Dr. Peter Attia. He's really set the benchmark, in my opinion, about how he's educating his clients, and his clients pay, I think, $60,000-$70,000 a year to be given information about all the different aspects of strength training, the benefits, the cardiovascular benefits, the emotional well-being, all the different benefits of nutrition, the latest science, the latest papers, and the latest science. So I was kind of influenced by that because I did an ACSM back in the 90s with Fitness First, and so we really were looking at contraindications. We were looking at all the different reasons why people would come in. And I think what you were saying before with the prevalence of the low cost, taking out all that stuff, we're missing a huge opportunity, because the majority of people, as we talk about the 60%, the people in that 60% who find exercise difficult and not able to stick, is because the majority of these people have some problems. They have some chronic illness and they need a solution, and they need somebody or something that's going to give them the confidence and the low intimidation environment, but the confidence to start exercising and have someone tell them, no, you need to be doing this, because the doctors generally don't do that. That hasn't changed in my career. People go to their doctor and say, what should I be doing? And they say, well, do some light exercise. Well, what does that mean? So there's no real prescription given by And that's not exclusively. There are some doctors in sports medicine, and that combination is very powerful. But it's still the minority, not the majority. And I think, yeah, just to say, I think every government is going to have a healthcare issue. I mean, the UK just came out with a paper on prevention, but gyms weren't even mentioned. They weren't even mentioned by the UK government that gyms could be a potential solution for people. I mean, it's just incredible. So we're missing this market. We must get together as an industry. We must, there's a massive opportunity if we get this right, to develop this hard to reach market.
So Rod, you've gone over the demographic that you're targeting, which is different to what is predominantly being catered for, which is historically more of a younger demographic that seem to be a lot more interested and easier to target, my guess, than the older population. And you've also covered the benefits of from a health perspective and why it's something that we should be looking at. There are obviously brands in the past that have also said similar things in terms of the importance of looking at health rather than just fitness. What have you, if we look at the package that you've put together with Zenergie, tell us a little bit about the business model. Where are you positioning it from a price perspective? How are you dealing with a lot of the industry challenges from a staff, from a staff and education perspective, based on the fact that many people in the space are still struggling to get hold of people, particularly people that have the skills to probably provide viable solutions for this type of audience. How does that impact margins? And then what's your view on the addressable market for this, both within Spain and potentially internationally?
Yeah. Well, the business model is based on a small footprint because we've learned. I mean, I learned from the Anytime Fitness days that this model of 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 square foot. I think you say feet in the States, do you? Because we're in meters. I still get a little bit confused with the change, but a smaller footprint club is always convenience based. And we basically want to go for a 500, 600 meter club. We depend on about 500 meters, 500 members. So it's personalized. Basically that's the business model. So we're looking at pricing between 79 and 150 euros a month. We have different categories of pricing going on. And we will sell, the basic package to come in. You can have just the gym. So we're offering Smart Strength Studio. We're offering a yoga studio. This is actually Energy Fitness that the video is showing now, because we've got these are the energy clubs that we've produced. The other one is more on the Zenergie one. But so the model, we're offering a dry sauna. So the base of the model is Smart Strength Studio, yoga, sauna in the changing rooms, and a nice community area. And the whole idea is to create a nice, clean, pleasant space. We offer the dry sauna because we feel that that's something that has the health benefits, but also is attractive for many people as a way to relax, and the health benefits are pretty well proven. And we also thought that the yoga, to get people into the gym, because sometimes if you talk about longevity, we didn't want it to be too clinical, but at the same time we want to attract people into a nice, attractive space where they feel that they can try the yoga. A lot of women in the 35 plus category, certainly in Spain, aren't doing enough strength training, but they do a lot of. But it could be a way to introduce people into more formalized strength training in the Smart Strength Studio after they come into the club. So that's really the model. The staffing issue, I think, as I said, I think before, I mentioned that eGym gives us the confidence to be our partner from a scaling point of view, because of the algorithms, because of the science behind that, to be able to create the programming for people with special requirements, where in the past you might need a team of sports scientists. So we do need good people. I think we're committed to developing education. You know, a big part of Zenergie is going to be education. As I said, we're going to be doing a lot of information on the benefits of exercise for our members. We really want to empower our members to make a change to their lives, so they're not beholden to food industry or pharmaceutical industry, so they can make informed decisions about their bodies, about certain things, about medication. We want to be nutritionally aware. We believe our industry, I believe strongly that our industry has a much better message in weight control, weight management than the pharmaceutical industry long term. But we seem to have lost that message, and I think we need to get it back. So our business model is going to be about what people need. There'll be some people that want to come to an environment like Zenergie because it's a low intimidation gym. There's probably going to be more people 35 and above than under 35. Less intimidation, more comfortable atmosphere, maybe even some 80s, 90s music just for some nostalgia. And at the same time, we're going to appeal to people who've got chronic illnesses. And as the science and the AI advances, we're going to be, we're going to be able to deliver programming to a vast variety of people who need, who need this support on their chronic illness, and that they're not getting it from the medical world. So, so look here, the gym for people who don't like going to the gym anymore. So people who don't like the gym, and a lot of people after 35 are leaving the gym. So we're always asking people, they're playing pickleball, they're playing paddle and all these different things and getting injured, but they're not thinking about the gym. And that's where we think, the opportunity is.
Well, I think we're almost up on time right now, and we typically, Rod, love to wrap up with a couple of key takeaways.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you what, in terms of what you're building now, which I think is a unique product. I'm trying to think of something that is an equivalent in the US or
Yeah.
Australia or the UK. Haven't really been able to find one or be able to think of one. I think there's elements of what you're doing that other
Yeah.
folks are doing as well. But I think to me, it's about democratizing longevity. So HVLP democratized the gym in terms of a price point to bring access. You're now democratizing, kind of doing the same. You're kind of
Yeah.
like the HVLP for longevity. So I'm excited about that. Any kind of significant takeaways that you've seen in building this energy experience?
Takeaways in I think
Learnings. Yeah.
well, as we're talking to our providers and partners and potential, it is going to be a franchise. Our plan is to franchise the business from Spain, from our head office in Barcelona. So we have Fit Brand international headquarters just outside of Barcelona with our full team, and we're looking to take this to the world. And I think one of the key takeaways when I start speaking to people in the community, in business, in the banks, especially people over 35, they all say, "Oh, that sounds like the kind of gym I want to go to." Low intimidation, some yoga, nice strength machines, the AI, the control, the way that they know that they're going to be, supervised and personalized. And everybody just seems to be saying, this is the kind of gym I want to go to. So I think we've got two things here. We've got a gym for people that just want to go to a gym because they don't really like the conventional hardcore kind of environments in a lot of gyms, and they're struggling to find, to get into the culture. And on the other hand, we're creating a product where we hopefully will be able to impact, preventative medicine. We don't want it to be too clinical. We don't, but I think once we start, that medicinal side will start to become more apparent. But it's going to be done by education and slowly bringing people into the awareness that this whole exercise is medicine, is going to be dramatic. And I think the world needs our product. We need to have a solution for where we're going in many societies, as far as our health and fitness as a solution. And I think this is a way of maybe beginning that journey, to try to change a little bit the perspective of the industry. This is a great industry, and I've been guilty as anybody, in the past of maybe not being aware of this. And as I've got older, it's not like I'm knocking, but we've got to get away from the pseudoscience. We've got to get into the education. We've got to give it how it is. And crazily enough, if you look at all the scientific studies, the information is dynamite. And when you talk about Novo Dansk having this huge, multiplying profitability
Valuation.
valuation, why can't our industry take some of that valuation by talking about the benefits that we provide, which have no side effects? But we've given up. We seem to have given it up. And people saying that exercise doesn't help you lose weight, or it doesn't, we have an incredible product which can change many, many lives. And I think we're a commercial business, we're a franchise, but this space has endless possibilities, I think, to develop and to go down different routes. So everybody's got to think about where they want to go. If you're high end, you want to go for people who are already fit, that want to add that extra longevity thing, they biohacking and they're doing, I get that, that's great. But we've got a huge 60% of the population, this middle 60% lost. They're not getting into the gyms, they need the bases. And also, luckily, we can give them longevity by getting them into cardio, getting them into strength training, and getting them to look after their emotional well-being as well.
Well, Matthew, you and I talk about, well, I'm going to head to you first, but you and I kind of talk about longevity all the time, and we're always trying these, what I feel like are very expensive sessions or very expensive therapies that are certainly very, very far. I would call them designer-like and very far from being democratized. Any final thoughts on the episode today and what Rod's doing with Zenergie?
Yeah, Rod and I have spoken about this a while. I think it's an interesting, exciting opportunity. I'd love to see something like this in the US because I don't believe the way it's being put together is here yet. And I think probably the US market is a great market that would resonate with this. I'd love to come out to Barcelona and see it and try it. I'd love to convince Rod to try something like our load system because one of the things out of this conversation is if you think of the way that I train now as I'm 55 years old, which sounds quite old, but then when you look at some of the role models that are in this sort of area, you've got people like Jennifer Lopez, Jason Statham, Terry Crews, Tom Cruise. There's a lot of people that you would see that are still fairly desirable in terms of their the lifestyle they portray, their body shape, and this kind of thing. And I think, as we talked about earlier in this episode, some of it is also marketing and positioning of this to a different demographic. Like there's definitely a lot of people in that age group. There's definitely a lot of disposable income people within that age group. Kids have left home. They're sort of reducing their burn. They're probably sold or sort of in a slightly different financial position. So definitely these people can do it. But I just think a lot of the concepts that are out there is you either go to a gym with younger people, and a lot of cases that in some cases that's just generally off-putting, or you have to you go to some of these PT studios that are definitely thriving at the moment, and so there's certainly probably a place with similar people, similar needs, but where you can also feel as though it's a place where the sort of cool and aspirational people go. So you almost don't feel like you're an oldie because that wouldn't be a place that I would want to join either. So yeah, look, I think it's great, and I think it would be interesting to see, how you take this forward, Rod.
Well, it is interesting. I think one just last thing I'd like to say. I mean, when people talk about, there's one thing that I quite like, and I'd encourage people to read Peter Attia's book, Out-Live, if they haven't done so already. But he talks about the last decade of people's lives. He talks about your optimal decade, which is you enter into your last decade and you don't know when that's going to be. You might have an idea. And what do you want to do in that last decade? Do you want to be playing with your grandkids? Or do you want to be sitting on the sidelines, in a chair, watching your grandkids kick a ball, or playing football or American football? You need to be pretty fit, or rugby, whatever. And a lot of people, and that's really what longevity for me is all about. It's about what do I want to do? And I'm a pretty active guy now. I'm still working out quite a lot. I go do a lot of kayaking, do a lot of paddle boarding here in Spain, enjoying that life. And a lot of people talk about 65 as being like, I was speaking to someone who was saying, I want to go to travel and walk up some stairs, and when I'm 65, and I think 65, that's only 4 years away from me. I want to be doing that when I'm 95, and this is the whole thing. It's making your health span last your lifespan. It's adding years to your life and life to your years, right? That's what we talk about in Zenergie, and it's really about that. So it's an educational message, it's a clinical message, there's a medicine message, but there's also this lifestyle message. And I think a lot of the time, if you're negative, I think what we learned in the 90s is if you say to people, work out or die, people just don't react. They get turned off. We kind of learned that in the 90s. So you've got to make it, so it's really important that people see, longevity is about living that last decade to the best of your ability, enjoying generally, hopefully, the money that you'll have because your kids would have left, you'd have paid off the mortgage. And then ironically, most people enter into a terrible time of their lives where from 75 onwards, they get these extra years, but they don't get the quality of life. So, one of our big messages has got to be, these last decades or the last decade of your life, you want to live that full mobility in the best way possible. And that's strength, that's cardio, that's mental wellness, that's community. And that's something that our industry can deliver very, very easily with a little bit of a change in the message, So that's where we are.
Yeah, well, that's really the gap to your point about health span versus lifespan. We have so much of a focus on lifespan, but when I, again, doing the research, going to the top of the episode on Spain, Spain's really identified health span where people, the average age is 83, but they're really living, to your point, Rod, the last 10 years of their life in a meaningful way. They're able to engage with their kids, be active with their community, eat a good diet. And it
Yeah.
really comes down to balance ultimately, too. Well, I'm excited. Hopefully, maybe Matthew, we'll go over to Barcelona. We'll give Zenergie a try and report back from an in-person visit.
And there's another last little thing that I think is a little bit of a personal project for me. I mean, people say to me, do you want to retire soon? And I'm like, okay, maybe I would want to retire if I wasn't enjoying life so much, And I get some people maybe want to retire, but you know what? I think with Zenergie as a franchise, we have a fantastic opportunity, not just to improve the lifespan or the health span or the quality of life of our members, but also our franchisees. Because one of the areas here, I mean, this whole idea of greypreneurs around the world, people who start becoming a franchisee or an entrepreneur after 50, usually are more successful. Some of the biggest franchise brands were launched, the founder of McDonald's was 54, I believe, if I remember rightly. And there's some evidence out there that people who start businesses over the age of 40 actually have less failure because they're a little bit less impulsive, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more patience, maybe. But we're on a bit of a mission also because we think that this could be a massive message, not only that people's life, the quality of life should be better, but your professional life. If you really want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be able to withstand some turbulence. Then you need to exercise. There's no doubt that for me, my longevity in this industry has come down, although I've got a bit of a shoulder issue right now for the first time. It's come down to the fact that I feel very good. I feel very well. I feel very energized, and it's part and parcel. And so the message is from Zenergie for our franchisees is not only about your members and about involved, it's about being an entrepreneur for longer. And actually, if you really want to be on the top of your game in any, CEO, entrepreneur, whatever, you've got to train more or less like an athlete nearly, to be able to withstand that. So, that's part of our project, which I think is going to be very exciting. And that's something
we can hear the passion coming through, Rod. We can feel it. Well, look, we're going to have to wrap up, but look, I appreciate your time. We'll definitely make an effort to get out there. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have enjoyed this conversation, you can leave some comments below in our YouTube channel or go to LinkedIn. You can go to the LinkedIn L.I.F.T.S page on LinkedIn and tell us what you think. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I look forward to speaking to you all next week.